Hello, Seiiti Arata. We have all suffered due to attachment, and it doesn't matter whether you are suffering due to love, suffering because you are unwell, or because you still don't have something that you would like to have. Regardless of the reason, your suffering has an origin. The origin of the suffering is the attachment to a desire. Or it could also be the opposite, which is an attachment to an aversion. Let me explain the two types of attachment. You suffer because you become attached to the desire of being in a relationship with a certain person. You suffer because you become attached to the desire of having a body type which you do not have. You suffer because you become attached to the desire of buying something that you have seen other people buy. Or the opposite happens, and the attachment is actually related to an aversion. You suffer because you become attached to the idea that you do not want to be in the relationship that you're in. You do not want to have that illness that you currently have. You don't want to have the things that you have. For example, you don't want to have that annoying neighbor next door. An aversion is simply a desire that things were different. And then the suffering comes from your attachment to your desires of having or not having something. And then the suffering ends when this attachment ends. So to explain it simply, if you want to end the suffering in your life, you have to learn the art of letting go your desires. But how can we stop being attached to our desires? You can replace the word desires with preferences. The solution is to let go of the need for things to be different and simply have a few preferences to guide your life. Free yourself from the attachment to your desires. And then you watch your suffering go away with it. The problem of desiring anything is that when you do not have what you want, you end up suffering for not having it. Focus has an amplifying power. The more you focus on what you want to have, the more attached you become to that desire. And then you suffer all the more for still not having what you want. For example, let's say that you really want to buy a house. Now you're attached to the idea that when you own your own house, then your life will be better. And while you are unable to buy that house, you suffer because you have not achieved that dream. Whenever you compare your current situation to an imaginary future situation, what do you think happens? You idealize how your life would be like if you were to buy the house. And by idealizing, reality becomes unfulfilling. Then it is you who suffers because your reality is not the way you want it to be. And one of the ways of ending this suffering is to simply accept reality as it is. The acceptance reduces your attachment to your desires. Just deal with it. If you do not wish for things to be different, well, there wouldn't be a cause for suffering. However, it is not realistic to be completely detached from your desires. Even the people who dedicate their lives to personal development are going to come across times in their lives when something unexpected happens and they will have desires. So we're going to offer you a more practical solution. And the most practical solution to suffer less in these situations is to minimize your attachment. Not getting rid of the attachment. Just minimize it. This will improve how you deal with your desires. Instead of wanting this or wanting that, you can simply be aware of your preferences. Having preferences reduces your attachment and minimizes suffering. Exchanging an obsessive desire for a simple preference is a technique which can greatly minimize our suffering. When I simply have a preference, I'm less attached, and therefore I will suffer less if I am unable to have what I prefer. Now, what is the difference between desiring and having a preference? It is not just a word game. The difference is that when you have a preference, if the thing that you prefer does not happen exactly how you imagined, it's alright. Having preferences is different from having an attachment to your desires. When you are attached to a desire, it is very difficult to accept reality. Wanting things to happen in a very specific way, wanting to buy something new, wanting to have people behave in a particular way. This is the origin of suffering. The cause of our suffering is not based on facts. Suffering is in our interpretation of the facts, in the way our brain interprets these facts. Suffering does not arise from losing your job, from losing someone you love, from not having enough money, or the end of a relationship. The suffering arises because our desires become disconnected from reality. It is the belief that the world would only be right if everything were aligned with what we want to happen. And therefore, we need to adjust our expectations to reality. Abandoning your desires is an impossible task. But abandoning attachment to your desires is a shortcut out of suffering. You don't need to abandon your desires to escape suffering. All you have to do is to give up the attachment to your desires. You can continue preferring to have more money in your bank account, a more interesting job, or be in shape. You can prefer to live in a nicer place, to be in a more loving relationship, to be a happier person. These preferences are guides which will lead you to act in a certain way to live the life you prefer to have. Now, what you cannot do is to get attached to these ideas and suffer while they're not part of your reality. Besides, depending on what kind of dreams you're attached to, they may never come true. So to be attached to your own dreams is to cause your own suffering. This is what you need to keep in mind. Suffering comes from clinging on to the idea that certain things should be a certain way, to having this aversion also that certain things should be different. Now, you can do this practical exercise to help you to realize that even if your dreams came true, you would not be much happier than you are right now. To abandon the attachment to your desires, simply observe, and then make a list of the negative emotions you usually feel: sadness, anger, frustration, anxiety, and so on. And then list which desires you're most attached to. Generally, these desires involve money, vanity, relationships, the need for approval, health, buying stuff, getting material goods. And now connect the two lists. Link the negative emotions that you often feel to the desires you're most attached to. For example, when you realize you don't have the body type that you would like to have, what do you feel? Frustration, anger, envy of other people. Finally, try to imagine what it would be like if you were able to fulfill all these desires that you are so attached to. Imagine you got that job you wanted, the relationship you wanted, the body shape you wanted, all the material possessions you wanted. Always remember that nothing lasts forever. Our tendency is to think that, oh, if we had all of that, then of course I would be happy. The truth is that as soon as we conquer each one of these things, new desires will emerge. And even if new desires don't arise, well, once you conquer all these things, you will see that they are not a permanent source of happiness. Sooner or later, you get used to it. It will end up losing the charm for these material goods, the relationship, the status you have, the body type you have. So that is why you should not get so attached to these desires. Now, you can prefer all these glorious things to happen as long as you are aware that they are not what will bring you lasting happiness. Of course, it is better to fulfill your desires than to not, but that's not what will make you happy in the long run. And on the contrary, being attached to them can and will certainly bring you suffering in the short term, or rather, today. Attachment to desires is the reason for our suffering. And to reduce your suffering, learn the art of letting go. Start having simple preferences for how you would like your life to be. But be aware that this is not what will define your levels of happiness. Whenever you find yourself suffering for something, take a moment. Try to think where that suffering comes from. If you are suffering because of unfulfilled desires, you may believe that a fulfilled wish would bring you eternal happiness, but you must realize that nothing is permanent. Even if you fulfilled your desire, it wouldn't be a source of lasting happiness. Do you know what would be a source of lasting happiness? There is no single answer, but there is a series of techniques already proven by positive psychology that you can learn right now in the happiness course. To find more about it, you can go to the link arata.se/happiness.